For a game often defined by what it doesn't have, there's an awful lot left to love about Ico. The minimalist storytelling comes to mind. Understated soundscapes and sparse, unintelligible dialogue, leaving only a simple set of mechanics to sell each beat. There's the architecture, a hallmark of Team Ico's work. Colossal ruins lived in until they're halfway to dust, revived and colored by your own experiences within those spaces. Or maybe it's designed by subtraction itself, Fumito Ueda's design methodology that strips the extraneous away and refines what's left to a brilliant shine. To me, though, Ico's contributions go well beyond a fresh mechanic worth borrowing, an art style worth imitating, or some framework worth copying. And I think everyone who's had the privilege of playing any of Team Ico's games can agree. For my part, I really like the strong human quality to Ueda's games. On September 3rd, 2011, Keiichiro Toyama of Silent Hill fame shared the floor with Ueda at Sony's Great Scene Sharing event in Tokyo. The day saw the two game directors in conversation to celebrate the launch of the Ico and Shadow of the Colossus HD Remastered collection. Toyama continues, noting that these games aren't about exploring all the facets of a gameplay or rule system, but rather about the way your feelings change as you experience the actual game. Toyama is one of countless developers who've been touched by Team Ico's medium-pushing works. And like he says, what truly inspired video game storytellers was not the box and bomb-based puzzling or the simple one-button combat or the 3D platforming. Team Ico's greatest gift to gaming is its unwavering loyalty to the experience. Each and every Team Ico game latches onto something real and human, an idea or feeling, and never lets it go. Rather than exhausting every possible permutation of a set of mechanics, rather than making games to impress the game designer in you, focus on designing experientially to inspire the kid in you, the poet in you, and in everyone who engages with it. Ask anyone what game best exemplifies this quality and you'll get the same answer every time. Shadow of the Colossus. Despite literally being in the name of the studio, the very idea that Team Ico was formed around, the reality is that Ico is better known as the game that walked so Shadow of the Colossus could gallop. Or, if looking beyond Team Ico's catalog, the game that laid the foundation for their favorite games. Ico is often celebrated for its contributions to more popular, more modern works. Fumito Ueda is celebrated for being their favorite designer's favorite designer. And by the time Ico could enjoy its cultural cachet, it got old. The only way people engage with Ico now is by proxy, playing games that descended from this common ancestor. Or, you know. Ico, the brainchild of then-fledgling game animator Fumito Ueda, began its life as a pilot movie starring a young girl and a younger boy, the two bonded by circumstance and physically bonded by hand. It would be built over 3.5 months in Lightwave 3D by Ueda and others on his favorite toy, the Commodore Amiga. Come June 1997, Ueda had his 3-minute movie featuring flashy combat, flying robots, and a variety of locales. At the time, Sony was looking for new blood to jumpstart their first-party development efforts, and they liked what they saw. Planning started for this new adventure game later in September when Ueda partnered up with producer Kenji Kaido. Together, they worked out what would become the pillars of their project. Quantity traded in for unparalleled quality, an experience so rich visually and polished mechanically that it transcended the virtual world and encroached on reality. By the August of 1998, the newly formed Team Ico issued their declaration in the form of a second prototype movie. Full production started 2 months after. But behind the scenes, the problems were already piling up. The game looked great for 98. It didn't run or play well. The character controller wasn't meeting their standards, and the PlayStation was struggling to keep up with Ueda's benchmarks for visual fidelity. The studio made the jump over to the PlayStation 2 in October 1999, which solved about as many issues as it created. Though these new problems the team was more equipped to solve. Technical troubles were resolved, but they could no longer afford to hide any of the game's visual shortcomings. In true Team Ico fashion, the jump in technology was met with further cuts. The inclusion of elements like inventory, health, and static NPCs were taken off the table permanently. Ueda wanted to trim the excess and focus on buffing out the scratches, his famous subtracting design, or design by subtraction, in action. 2 years, tens of developers, and many movies later, Ico was released on September 24, 2001 in North America. The rest of the world would get their hands on it over the next year. It took 4 years for Ico to go from flying robot CGI short to dysfunctional PlayStation game to PS2 darling, and despite the adventures of Ico and Yorda permeating every facet of game development in the years that followed, Ico was no hit. A worldwide release and valiant marketing effort from Sony put somewhere around 700,000 copies of Ico in PlayStation 2 owners' homes. Critically though, Ico's numbers looked a lot better with glowing review after glowing review, with Japan's own Famitsu giving Ico one of its lowest scores, a respectable 30 out of 40, provoking the ire of a younger Yoko Taro. Though it couldn't invite as many people into its world as it wanted, the ones that came stayed, and they haven't left since. Among them is Halo 4's creative director Josh Holmes, who, speaking with Time magazine, said, "I'll always be influenced by that game, probably in ways that I don't even understand, because it's definitely one of the pinnacle moments in my gaming career." In 2010, official PlayStation magazine readers dubbed Uncharted 2 the greatest PlayStation game of all time, a crown that Naughty Dog co-president Evan Wells was quick to offer to Ico and GTA 3 instead. Wells claimed that the studio was focused on delivering an experience similar to Ico. For Ico's 20th anniversary, Famitsu reached out to prominent game developers for a comment, including The Last of Us's creative director Neil Druckmann, who didn't miss his chance to gush about the game. Ico is a source of inspiration, and it is my favorite video game of all time. Metaphor Interactive founder Vander Caballero is open about how influential Ico was during the development of his first game, Papo Yo. He mentioned in an interview with CG Magazine that the games that actually shaped me for what I do today were Ico and Shadow of the Colossus. Playdead's Arndt Jensen sees Ico as nothing short of a masterpiece. He comments on how the subtlety and beauty of the game, and the authenticity of its characters, fosters a genuine connection with the abstract world of Ico. Ueda's debut and masterpiece Ico had a profound impact on me, and remains one of my favorite games of all time, a game that truly inspired me with its bold, forward-thinking, and exceptional presentation. What's so great about Ico is that you can save yourself by sitting on the sofa. Sofas are special, aren't they? They are fluffy and relaxing, and when two people sit on them, you can save. In an age when autosaving was still a luxury, I thought he was a competitor for creating such a stylish save point. I decided to create a new save point that would rival the sofa, so I joined the ranks of chair-based save game designers like Ueda-san with a toilet save. That game company founder and creative director Genova Chen wouldn't be doing what he does at all if not for Ico. The dialogue between Ico and Yorda surprised and moved all who played it, generation after generation, and from there, I believe many people have gone on to pursue artistic game creation as a career. I am one of them. From Software's Hidetaka Miyazaki, who has a friendly beef with rival Ueda stan Yoko Taro, can barely contain his appreciation for Ico and reverence for Ueda. It was a game that changed my life, no exaggeration, and I am proud to say that it was Ico and that it was Ueda-san's game. The mythology that runs through your games, including Ico, has always been my goal. I love Ico. Ico has long been canonized in the video game space, and though developers jump at the chance to sing its praises, the amount of attention that these newer games garner doesn't necessarily translate to more eyes on Ico itself. And while Ico's name continues to pop up in best of all times lists and critical discussions, there's an understandable worry that its achievements in the medium will become fodder for superficial interpretations. In regards to the examples given earlier, I'm not here to draw a line between which games I think got Ico and which didn't. At the same time, I don't think this fear is necessarily unfounded. There's still a stigma attached to Eastern games, despite the endless medium-pushing works produced by those developers, their advancements attributed to popular Western games instead. But for right now, I want to celebrate the through line in these testimonials, and that is the appreciation for a work of art that set their curiosity on fire. What Ico did was provide a benchmark for what an emotional game could be and offered its methodology for achieving it. It issued a challenge to its players to do for future generations what it did for them, through this medium or others. Sure, over the years, developers have tried to recreate the vibes, channel Ico nostalgia, and represent a similar relationship between characters, but any notable descendant of Ico has something new to bring to the table. They aren't confined within its castle walls, doomed to rehash the same tired ideas over and over. Ico is a student of the works that came before it, and I doubt anyone would argue that it wasn't a breath of fresh air. I encourage anyone in need of a creative pick-me-up to knock on the castle gates and get a taste of Team Ico's storytelling sensibilities. The studio helped birth some of the most exciting and influential movements in gaming, from the Souls games to the Limbos to the Journeys. And these games went on to inspire future cohorts, and those games will do the same. A piece of Ico resides in all of them, even if they don't know it yet. Maybe Ico touched all the people it needed to. And clearly it sold well enough for Sony to let Team Ico bring Shadow of the Colossus and The Last Guardian into the world. The studio can take comfort in the fact that it was instrumental in shaping the medium as we know it, even if we wished better for those often overlooked and undervalued Japanese classics. Fumito Ueda is a humble guy. He downplays all of the praise he's received from developers and players alike. When Team Ico's games failed to represent Sony on the sales charts, he chalked it up to his work just not being good enough. History has told us that few players would accept that answer. And then he got back to making games. That so many people are blissfully unaware of Ico's influence on their favorites, or wrongly attribute certain achievements in design to Ico's children, might inflict a little psychic damage on the Team Ico superfan, but likely doesn't bother Ueda at all. When you've spent so long making something, you can easily lose your objectivity. Any praise was far outweighed by the criticism in my mind. But there is one thing that gets to him. All these reviews, over all these years, yet few have ever acknowledged that in Ico is the DNA of a game Ueda owes so much to. Another World, or Out of This World, is a cinematic adventure game released in 1991 for the Amiga and Atari ST. It was developed by French game developer Eric Chahi over the course of 2 years, with audio help from friend and former schoolmate Jean-François Freitas, on an engine that Chahi built himself. The game features minimalist gameplay, no HUD, unforgettable visual and oral aesthetics, a single weapon with multiple functions mapped to a single button, and trades text for visual storytelling. It wields all these elements effortlessly to tell the tale of two new friends working together to escape a hostile alien facility. If it wasn't obvious already, Another World was the foundation on which Ueda built his design by subtraction. In his review of the game, Tim Rogers notes that Another World is a lean game, designed through a series of what must have been excruciatingly difficult choices. Chahi chose not to incorporate every possible gun-shield dynamic permutation into the game because this is not a game about shooting. Overstaying his welcome was never Chahi's intent. Chahi's intent, presumably, was to make a game that begins, middles, and ends. Keiichiro Toyama expressed the same sentiment when he praised Ueda's games for focusing on the journey, the experience, and not the thorough exploration of a gameplay system. Ico has inherited from Another World a level of confidence in itself and its ability to evoke emotions in the audience. The developers of both are so certain of the experience that they want to create, of the kind of story they want to tell, and of the strength of their core mechanics, that the levels just build themselves. Such a clear vision and distinct identity that everything else just forms around it, like the work itself possessed its developers. You might be surprised to hear that most of Another World's levels were built on the fly. What about Ico? Toyama, who visited Ruins for research on his own projects, recalls asking Ueda about his experiences with Ruins, only for Ueda to reply, "I've never visited any." He adds, "I had a complete picture of it in my head already, so I guess I just didn't need to." Ueda can be disappointed that few players saw the reflection of Another World in Ico, but while the latter drew inspiration from the former, both are wholly unique experiences. On the topic of games emulating Another World, Chahi tells GameSpot, "I think emulating is not the right word, because it is like copying something and not bringing something new. Indeed, all creations are nourishing each other. Another World took some influence from Jordan Mechner's Karateka, in terms of both movies and in fantasy art. Ico has been influenced by Another World and emphasizes the emotional relationship between two characters, and so on. And we've come full circle. Another World is a child of Mechner's Karateka and Prince of Persia, Ico's biggest video game influence is Another World, and 2003's Prince of Persia owes everything to Ico." Pablo Picasso once said, in a timeline where he actually said it, "Lesser artists borrow, great artists steal." He may or may not have been rephrasing Igor Stravinsky, and Stravinsky might have lifted it from T.S. Eliot, who definitely once said, "Immature poets imitate, mature poets steal. Bad poets deface what they take, and good poets make it into something better, or at least something different." The good poet well. Luckily, we have Jean-Luc Godard, who came in after to succinctly summarize the idea with, "It's not where you take things from, it's where you take them to." However much Ueda cares about real architecture is negligible when compared to his interest in fantasy, dreams, and vibes. That drive is so obvious when you consider his love of the architectural stylings of painters like Gérard Trignac, Giovanni Battista Piranesi, and of course, Giorgio de Chirico. Look no further than his cover for the PAL version of Ico. Nowadays, no one even remembers the original North American cover. It's because of Ueda's interpretations of these works that Ico was able to capture its iconic and overwhelming sense of loneliness. Two kids lost in the guts of an impossibly large castle. Ueda, as an artist, used pre-existing great works as a base that he then built upon to create something different. It's in combining his influences, these and many others, and filtering these ideas through his artistic lens that the world got Ico. The game is never shy about its influences, it's so confident in what it has that separates it from them. Two things can be true at once. Another World did it a decade earlier, but that doesn't mean Ico stole its glory either. Both are deserving of their flowers, and while they never got the time in the spotlight that their fans think they deserved, their legacies live on in the games that followed them. And, of course, some, like Ico, carry that torch better than others. Enter Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons, a single-player co-op adventure game with no HUD, no words, no... The Starbreeze-developed project was the first to be helmed by filmmaker-turned-video game creative director Joseph Fares. Many consider it one of the shining examples of a game that makes full use of interactivity and, through its mechanics, infuses every single beat with as much emotion as possible, a poster child of so-called emotional game design. But it isn't without its skeptics. There's no shortage of game players who don't believe Brothers lives up to its laurels. I am not one of them. In fact, I have a confession to make. Another World is a game I respect immensely, but it is not a game I think about often, and it certainly is not a game I find myself coming back to play. It inspired Ico, a game that's carved out its own cozy 5,000-word space in my brain, but if I'm going to be honest, I enjoy thinking about it more than playing it. Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons, now that's a game I think about every other day and absolutely love playing. After weighing the numbers, the only logical step is to accept that Brothers may be my favorite game of all time. To me, there are few better ways to spend 3 hours. Brothers is my Ico, my Another World, and it is a game that understands what made those two great, honors their achievements, and offers something new. In an interview with Wired, Forrest noted that Ico was the starting point and proof that emotions could exist in games, kind of a wake-up call for designers. He went as far as to say Ico was one of the first games that tried to evoke emotion. Too far, maybe, but we understand the sentiment. Ico was unquestionably loyal to a single idea, a set of feelings, and everything it did was in service of that. We see its influence so obviously in Brothers. Ueda would be green with envy if he knew Brothers' homages didn't go unnoticed. The game wears its influences on its sleeve, but like any work of art, it pulls from plenty of other influences, perspectives, and lived experiences. From the time he was born to the time he left Lebanon, Forrest's home country was engulfed in a civil war. War is no way to spend your formative years, so he escaped into himself and let his creativity take him away, at least mentally, to a better place. Those big ideas of his would stay trapped in his young mind until his family finally found the means to leave for Sweden. It was in this new environment that Forrest would begin pumping out short films until he found success with Yalla Yalla. Forrest's works marry his childhood experiences and Lebanese culture with that of his new home. One of his later films, Zozo, centers on a Lebanese boy during the Civil War who ends up in Sweden. Nothing changed when he pivoted to video games. Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons combines his childhood experiences with Swedish fairy tales and a healthy dose of video game influences like Ico, Another World, Chrono Trigger, and Secret of Mana. The opportunity to enter the world of games came in 2010 when Forrest was offered a chance to work on a prototype at a school he was speaking at. The first thing he thought of: 2 brothers, 2 joysticks, 1 player. Like Another World, like Ico, Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons starts off with the idea for a story, a feeling, a style, and then immediately after the right mechanics to tell said story and highlight that emotional experience. One fruitful meeting with Starbreeze later, and Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons was a go. In 2013, the game was released to critical acclaim and was a commercial success, propelling Forrest into indie superstardom. For its clever control scheme and mechanical framework, it won the Best Game Innovation Award at the BAFTAs. Ico put its simple mechanics and puzzles on a pedestal, its level design focused on adding character to the castle through your interactions with and within it. It uses every bit of what little it has and dresses it up to create an intimate experience that still feels massive. Minimalism for maximum impact. Forrest was looking to break that minimalist mold. A game like Brothers seems to necessitate restraint, and though Brothers operates within the same general boundaries, it isn't shy when it comes to packing that 3-hour journey. It's half the length of Ico, but intent on showing you at least twice as much. If anything, its levels take after Another Worlds. Ico's environments and mechanics definitely go the distance, but also, variety is the spice of life. Brothers sticks to 2 sticks and 2 action buttons, while also ensuring that you have a steady stream of interesting stuff hitting your palate, visually, mechanically, thematically. The 2 brothers start their adventure on the edge of their seaside village. Their first stop explores the Troll Prison Labor Industrial Complex, then it's off to Cemetery Wolves, River Raid, Goats Flying, a Giant's Castle, Giant's Battlegrounds, Rituals, Invisible Snowmen, The Tree of Life, Another World references. Ico worships restraint and cleanliness. It requires them to put you in its story. Brothers has a lot more to show you, and not all of it seems immediately relevant. Excess and excitement define Brothers, but zoom out and you'll see the full shape of its story. It maintains that same laser focus, that same commitment to a concise, potent narrative. It just does more. And that doesn't make it worse, just different. We tend to only put art that we consider pristine and precise on a pedestal, but there's still a place for something a little more chaotic. I mean, Exhibit B, Forrest's third game, It Takes Two. If Another Worlds was the culmination of all of Eric Chahi's development experience and sensibilities, if Ico put its own spin on Chahi's philosophy and dressed up a classic plot with Ueda's artistic sensibilities, then Brothers further adds to that foundation with its own design flourishes and love for variety of all kinds to spin a coming-of-age story colored by Forrest's experiences in Lebanon. 3 different games, all learning from their predecessors, all tapping into a similar philosophy, and all undeniably unique. Last confession, Ico frustrates me. There's something about the cadence of the levels and the presentation of the puzzles that just seems engineered to annoy me. The combat encounters eat up too much time, and Yorda. They are flow state saboteurs. You'll even catch Ueda saying things like, maybe in Ico I think we subtracted too much, and I kind of agree. But despite my personal grievances, I can't go more than a few days without thinking about it. I can't stop seeing it in the games that I play, and I thank Ico for giving me my favorite game. Honestly, it doesn't matter if you've played Ico. The first time I really played Ico, from beginning to the end, was after I finished Brothers for the second time. I just finished running through a series of so-called emotional games, including that game company's catalog and Playdead's catalog, all children of Ico. I had played all the Souls games up to that point. I had played The Last of Us, I had played Papo Yo and Halo 4 and Nier and No More Heroes, so many other games that stood on the shoulders of this particular giant. So when I finally saw the credits roll, it hit me. I'm already intimately familiar with this game. I never got to fully experience it before, but I've played games like this. My new favorite game ever was like this. That's what spurred me to pick it up in the first place. Ico was already one of my biggest influences. And if you've been into games at any point in these last 2 decades, there's a good chance that it's also one of yours. You might just not know it yet. Ico remains one of the most beautiful, most evocative, and most influential games of the 21st century. And it's paved the way for even more powerful art to come.